Hey guys, excited to have this episode today with Jase Allen, who's a co-owner at Allen-Hall Mortuary and he's also an estate planning attorney at ALLEN Law Office. In addition, he was a CFO of Jase Tire and Oil Management Company, which sold last year in a merger. So it's a great episode. Jase has done a lot. He's not only is he an attorney, but he's in the mortuary business. He has experience elsewhere with other business ventures. He's done summer sales. So really, really great person to learn from. We dive into his story. We talk about why estate planning is important. We talk about how funeral homes operate, if anyone's ever been interested in looking at those. So it's a great conversation. Excited for you guys to hear it. And with that, let's dive in. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the show. Today we have Jase Allen, who's a co-owner of Allen-Hall Mortuary and an estate planning attorney at ALLEN Law Office, and then formerly CFO or CEO? CFO yeah. At Jase Tire and Oil Management Company, which recently sold.
Yeah.
So congrats on that.
Thank you.
But excited to have you in, Jase, and get to know you a little bit better and hear your story.
Well, thanks for inviting me. First time being on a podcast, so I was excited to do it, I guess.
Yeah, and I love doing it with people who haven't been on before, because people get to hear the story for the first time.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, they'll have guests that have been on the road show, podcasts, sure. And it's like, okay, we've heard the story, but it's always fun to get the first take on it. So
yeah,
I usually like to start with your upbringing.
Yeah.
So I guess your childhood, any influences you had growing up that molded you into who you are today?
Yeah. I'm a Cache Valley guy. Grew up in Logan, born and raised. Grew up in a neighborhood that was just really stable. Awesome mom and dad who were, the biggest influences in my life. Oldest of four boys, so kind of had to be the big brother. And but the neighborhood we lived in, I think you might have interviewed Eric Nielsen.
Yeah.
So I think he had mentioned the neighborhood too.
Shout out to Eric.
Yeah, shout out to Eric. But it really was kind of this idyllic place to grow up because, we could walk down to the river and there was like a little dam there that we could fish in. And then, just lots of kids playing sports and basketball and everything like that. And then just tons of built-in mentors in the neighborhood. It was a middle-class neighborhood, but there were several families that were, founders or CEOs and different things. And so just great people to be young men's leaders and different things. And so, but just growing up, with four boys, oldest of four, and just kind of sports, family, and then scouts back when we had that.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Really the scouting program was a big thing growing up. I think my dad was my scoutmaster. So really influential, my dad. And he was kind of an entrepreneur the whole time. He's a funeral director.
Okay.
So I'm a third generation funeral director as well. You mentioned Allen-Hall Mortuary. And, but he was always kind of, he started a candle business. He started a kind of a swag company and they're both still going.
Cool.
So he started them and sold them. So just really good examples, from, just family values. And then also, in the neighborhood, just good, I think just, people that were ambitious and you just kind of looked up to them and wanted to be like them.
Right. Yeah. I had a similar experience. I grew up Sandy Draper area.
Yeah.
And I remember driving around and seeing, these houses on a hill and these successful people and just having that kind of be an inspiration for me. Like, how do I become like Brother Johnson or whoever it is, and trying to emulate a little bit of what they do, and having those influences is super helpful. And Logan is a beautiful place, by the way.
Oh yeah.
I love driving through there up to Bear Lake or wherever. It's a cool town.
I'm definitely biased, but yeah, we love Logan and all that it has to offer. We have to drive down to Salt Lake for a lot of things and think nothing of it, but sometimes your perspective, if you live in Salt Lake and coming up to Logan, is like, that's like almost Canada, isn't it? It's a different perspective. It just, everyone thinks how cold it is and everything, but we love it.
Yeah, that's great. And then, I mean, you mentioned some experiences that your dad had. I guess going into or shifting into your college, I know you went to USU,
Yeah.
And then subsequently University of Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
That's where your law degree.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know that until I was looking at these questions. We actually own a couple properties in Omaha. I know Lincoln is where University of Nebraska is, but I'm out there. I fly into the Omaha airport probably once a month. So
I'm usually in Omaha this weekend every year, but this year we actually with Eric, shout out again. Me and a couple other buddies, we'd go to the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meeting every year.
That's right. That's this weekend.
For the past 3 years we've done it. This year it didn't work out, and hopefully Warren's still going next year.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Do you guys, what's driving you out there? I mean, are you just...
So one of my friends 3 years ago was just like, hey, he goes, I just feel like we need to go, buy a couple B shares and go listen to Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. And he just, we're all kind of our group of guys, we're just kind of all in different businesses, and just, he really felt strongly like we have these two gentlemen that are kind of national treasures who we don't know how much longer they'll be able to do it. And he goes, I'll just regret it if I never went and listened to him. And so we went 3 years ago, just flew into Omaha. You get up really early. I think they open the doors at like 7, and it's just a huge line of people just trying to get in. It's a really fun atmosphere. Everyone's super friendly, from all over, tons of people from India and Asia and all over the US.
Wow.
And just people wanting to go hear these two old sage gentlemen give kind of practical, old-fashioned advice, but they're like keeping up with the times though. Like they know exactly what's going on.
Right.
And so you go in and you're sitting there for like a couple hours before it starts, and you walk around and they have these free, like Little Debbie, really gross donuts, but we're just eating them.
Yeah. The stuff Warren Buffett likes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're just eating it. And then they have a little, like trade show going on, which is amazing because every little booth is a business that is part of Berkshire Hathaway, so you've got NetJets and you've got Dairy Queen and you've got, Geico and all these different things that you See's Candy, right? Yeah. And just all of these businesses that you can go and see. And it's just really inspiring. And everyone's just on the edge of their seat waiting to hear what these guys have to say. And they give their opinion about everything from the market to Bitcoin to whatever. And people ask questions, and, they kind of have their own humor and stuff like that. But yeah, last year was the first, so we went last year too, and Charlie Munger had passed away. So it was a little bit different feel, but it was still good. But yeah, it was just kind of became a fun tradition, but we didn't do it this year, but
that's cool.
We need, I want to do it again
I'll
next
have to buy
year.
some B shares and start making that part of my,
you need to, it's fun.
Our visits out there. That's cool to hear.
Yeah.
So then going back to your college experience, did you know what you wanted to become? How did that impact what you studied? What was that experience like?
So, I went to a year of college before my mission. So right after high school, and I thought, I didn't really know what I wanted to be, but I felt driven. I wanted to, I'd done good in school. And so I thought, well, I think maybe I want to be a doctor, right? I mean, I really didn't know though, but I was declared like a biology major, because that's kind of helps get you your classes to do that. So I did that, took like biology and chemistry and all that stuff a year before my mission. And then I went on my mission and to England, and I, towards the end of the mission, start thinking about, well, what am I going to do? And I just thought, I've always like grown up working in the funeral home with my dad. Obviously there's certain things I couldn't do, but just helping on a viewing, a funeral, or washing the hearses, and I just liked it. And so I said, Dad, when I come home, so to become a licensed funeral director, mortician, it's kind of like an associate's degree. And so they have a mortuary school. And I said, I think I just want to, not go to college anymore, but just go to mortuary school and do that and then start working. And that's what my dad did. And he was like, no, you're going to go to college first and then we'll see, Mm-hmm. And, I think that was wise of him. I think he knew the family business would always be there, but I had, I came home and I had a academic full tuition scholarship. So I think that was maybe part of it. Like, you got to use that.
Right.
And so I changed to business and did finance and economics, and, it was good. And kind of, that's 3 more years, and got married, and then kind of thought, maybe actually I want to become a lawyer, mm-hmm. And I think the mortuary stuff was still always in the back of my mind. Like it'll be there. 'Cause even when I went to law school, I was thinking, I think I could do an estate planning practice, like right kind of by the mortuary. Obviously they're different businesses, but I was like, people are pre-planning their funerals. They got to get their will and their trust. And so just kind of, so in law school, I would take estate planning classes and estate tax and wills and trusts and all that kind of stuff. Just, kind of, hey, this is kind of what I want to do. And so, finished law school in Lincoln, and, then came back to, during law school, a big thing is like getting experience in the summers.
Yeah.
And so, maybe even to backtrack, one of the summers I worked at Vivint in their legal department, and I was able to get that, job because I actually, during college, I did door-to-door sales.
Yep.
So, which was so valuable. I mean, knocking doors on a mission versus door-to-door sales are 2 different things.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of, door-to-door sales culture in the Valley here and in Utah. And I just felt like I did it 3 summers. It was just such a valuable, there's so many things to learn about yourself, about working hard, about being resourceful, about communicating, about asking, like how to close someone. Like you gotta be bold, you gotta ask. And so those, I think too, that was maybe part of the like going to law school, was having success in that. I thought, well, if I'm successful in sales, I could probably be a good attorney, because if you can sell, you can make arguments too, and different things.
Sure.
So did a summer selling, satellite dish network, in Indianapolis, first summer. Second summer went to Austin, Texas with Vivint, and sold, with Casey Baugh's team. He's kind of well known here in the Valley.
He's been on the podcast.
Oh, he's been on the podcast. Yeah. Love Casey.
He's got a great podcast himself.
He does. Well. He does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was Casey's first year with Vivint. I was in his office and helped him recruit a team, go to Austin. And it was kind of unique because we had all done like satellites and stuff. I was with the company he was with before, and we came over, and he was managing this team without really having managed a security team before. But I think to be able to do that, he had to go, and I would go with him some of the times down to Arizona and sell, and we had to get so many accounts so that they could see, okay, they know what they're doing.
Sure, yeah.
So a lot of us hadn't necessarily sold. He's a phenomenal recruiter. So he was able to get some guys on the team that had, and just build a really good culture of like, the culture was like, you work and you learn and you just immerse yourself in this all summer because the summer's fast. And we did really well. Like, I can't remember how we stacked up, but we were like, they had these competitions and we were right up there. And I think we won some of them, and we were right up there with guys that had been selling. And so did that. Then the next summer came back and did it one more time with him in Dallas. And then after that, I was decided to go to law school. So
did you ever think about, did you ever consider, I'm just going to go full-time summer sales? Because I know a lot of guys are like, hey, I'm making more money than I would, doing X or Y. Why not just do this full-time?
I did. I did well with it. I was able to do law school debt-free because of it and all that.
Yeah.
And I really did consider, making a go of it. I think part of it, my wife and I, we had a child and kind of the back and forth. I don't know if that was her favorite.
Sure.
And so I think, she saw it as being like doing that year after year after year after year as being hard to, we have 5 kids now, but to do with a family, which I'm sure it is, but you can do it, right? People have done it. And so we just, decided, hey, this long-term isn't for us, but we had a great experience. But yeah, we definitely considered it.
Cool. Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah. And I think had we done it, would have been great.
Yeah.
Like have friends who stayed in the industry and that kind of shifts, right? Like moving to solar or different things. And I think it's, you have this skill set that you can kind of take anywhere. And so a lot of those guys have done that and have done great. And some have stayed in the industry. Even though the industry seems to have changed it seems like so long ago when I was doing it in, 2006, 7, 8, 9, something like that.
Yeah. It's evolved a lot.
Yeah.
And I've grown to respect it a ton. To your point, all the skill set, my brother, Logan is in that industry, but
oh, nice.
Because when I was at BYU, I did accounting.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, oh, I'm too good for summer sales, kind of had that mentality of like, I'm going to go get a big boy job. But I was totally wrong. Frankly, like it would have been very beneficial for me to go knock doors for a summer rather than do this or that internship, plug in numbers in a computer, you know what I mean? Whatever I did. So it's a ton of respect for that industry.
Yeah, I think there's room for both that kind of stuff, right? I think it's good to understand some of the back end type stuff, doing those accounting internships and things. And then I think it's good to get the experience on the doors too. Like it's something I always tell people, like, I'd love my kids to one day go do it, even if it's just for a summer, right? Even if you tank at it, it's still not a failure. Like if you just, cause I have had friends who they've gone out and maybe barely broke even and they're running like successful businesses now and have been really successful. And, it just, sometimes it takes longer for someone, or sometimes their skills translate in a different way. But I don't think any of them would have said, I wish I'd never gone out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And two, the networking value of it is so valuable. If I look at the guys that I sold with, if I were to tap into just that network, it's amazing.
Absolutely.
And they're not just all doing door-to-door sales. So that aspect, I think, because if you take kind of a group of those guys, most of the time they're pretty driven. You got to be confident to go do direct sales most of the time. And they're just going to find a way to make it happen. And so, and then you kind of have that special bond of like,
you're in the trenches together.
Yeah. The time we got a gun pulled on us, the time we got, all the kind of stuff that just going in random neighborhoods,
right.
That you do. And so, so I think, I was, going into law school and Casey's like, hey, And just always been supportive of whatever, hey, that's good. That's what you're going to do. He's like, I think I could get you, an internship with Vivint in-house. And I was like, great. 'Cause I'd love to come back, in the summers. And so I think it was my first summer I came back, and worked in-house in Vivint and, in their legal department. Which was a great experience. I think they were still, I'm trying to think if they had made the switch to Vivint or if it was still APX. I think they had just switched to Vivint.
Okay.
Yeah. 'Cause when I was selling on the doors, it was Apex or APX or whatever.
Got it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Okay. So then post-graduation, it looks like you went and spent some time maybe with a couple law firms.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. What were those?
Yeah. So,
like?
So I worked Vivint. I worked for a local law firm, kind of a few different legal internships. Did one with a local law firm in Logan. And then that's who I ended up getting a job with after law school. So I was able to come back to Logan, worked there for a little bit. And then I got a job offer for kind of a big plaintiffs firm out of the Bay Area. And they specialized in, I'll go back to the first firm. So yeah, worked for a local firm, and really it was a good place. It's kind of a general practice firm. So you kind of just learn, you'd be doing family law, then estate planning, and then, maybe a business something, and just kind of a good broad, kind of education on that as a brand new attorney.
Yeah.
But I think I was just a little more hungry and wanted, to just kind of stretch myself a little bit more, and probably a position where I'd need to be maybe patient for a little longer. So I think that's where I took a job with this big firm out of San Francisco, and they had an office in Salt Lake, and they had signed up a bunch of clients a few years before who had like mesothelioma and stuff, and they were working through this. They had the largest asbestos, they had the largest amount of asbestos cases, I think, in Utah, and they were just working through them. And so there's kind of two parts to that. There's kind of a bankrupt, like a lot of these companies that made products with asbestos went bankrupt. There's all these trusts with money in it. And so these plaintiffs or clients, they'd get money from the trust, from the bankruptcy, and that would help fund the litigation to the companies that were still in business.
Okay.
And so was doing that. The firm was really successful. They had some phenomenal litigators, and thought, yeah, we'll move to Salt Lake. And I was kind of doing the remote thing, and then just thought, you know what, I think I want to stay in Cache Valley. It's kind of interesting how you learn that. Sometimes you think, yeah, let's go to Salt Lake. Let's spread our wings. And then it's like, you know what? Like we have a good thing going. And so always been, liking business and entrepreneurial, and said, okay, I'll start my own practice. And so that's when it's, after a few months with this litigation firm, decided to just start my own estate planning practice, kind of like I thought in law school the whole time. But I always thought I need to get experience. I need to, and sometimes like you get experience just by doing it. Just go do it. Right.
So how long after law school was that you started up your own group?
About 2 years.
Okay. So yeah, pretty soon thereafter.
Yeah.
I mean, and what advice would you give around that balance of experience versus starting your own?
Yeah, I definitely feel like there is, depending on, there's so many different things you can do if you're in law school. But if you're wanting to practice, there is tremendous value with practicing with a firm, tremendous resources. It is nice to be able to walk into a senior attorney's office and get direction and ask questions. And so tremendous value, I think, in that. Do I think people can go right out of law school and start their own? I do. I think that though finding the right mentors who have done it though is going to be helpful, because you're either going to learn from their mistakes or you're going to make those mistakes. So,
Right.
you know, and there's a lot of resources out there depending on what practice area you go into, with practice groups and software and different things like that. But I think even people that take jobs out of law school that do want to eventually do their own thing, don't worry about what you're getting paid at these firms. Consider it just the educational value is huge in learning how to do it. But I think you can do it both ways. It's just how fast you want to start it.
Yep. I love it. I think that's right. And so at what point did the mortuary business, I know your father was was there too, but at what point did you have that going at the same time, or was that later? So
when I started my own practice, it was right next to the mortuary. At that same time, I went into the mortuary business. So I said, Dad, I think like, you know, I've been interested in this, and I think now I do want to come in and then have this law practice kind of right here. And he was, you know, at that point he was okay with it. And, so I came in, he said, but you're going to have to go to mortuary school. You're going to have to do more school. So luckily, mortuary school you can do online if you have like kind of someone that can be an apprentice, like that you can apprentice under. And so, you know, there was really no one better to learn from than my dad. And so, you know, learned all that I needed to know from him, but also did the schooling online through a school in Houston, Texas. So I had to go back a few times for labs, because I had to learn how to embalm and everything. So, which I think was super important. I think knowing how to do everything in that business is important. Like, even though now I don't do a lot of the embalming and different things, because we have a great team of funeral directors and things that can, but knowing how to do that, going through the becoming licensed and everything was important. And so really glad that I had the opportunity to do that. But yeah, at the same time when I started my law practice, I had the mortuary business, and would just kind of schedule clients. And then you know, the nice thing about estate planning is it's not like I've got a court date, and so I can't help on this funeral because I got to be in court. Like, you can schedule your estate planning clients when is convenient for them and me as well. And so that's kind of how it was able to work. And sometimes, you know, there would be some overlap, because they'd be pre-planning a funeral and they wanted to get a will and a trust done or something like that. And so, you know, that was also helpful too. But yeah, that same time. And so got in that business with my dad. And then a few years after, my uncle, who was my dad's partner, wanted to retire. And so I bought him out. Okay. And so then me and my dad became partners in the business. And so, which has been, you know, super fun. I look up to my dad a ton, and he's just so awesome in that business and in the Valley. And he does just a really good job, really good with people, really good at what he does. Just a good partner. And it's been fun because we've been able to make a couple acquisitions, after becoming partners. And so, you know, in the industry, I mean, you can start your own mortuary, but a lot of times mortuaries are kind of generational, they're family, tradition. Yep. And so we just have had a few competitors that when they wanted to retire, that we, you know, were able to make an acquisition and keep their team and kind of, you know, they're close enough to our other ones that we kind of have some synergies and stuff like that. So kind of, it's been fun to do some acquisition in that business with them as well. And luckily too, I have a brother that's now come in to the business, and he's doing awesome and is really good, and has really taken we sell headstones too. Okay. And he has a background in, business, and he worked at Goldman Sachs for a little bit, and then he went into some SEO stuff. And so he's kind of done some really good SEO stuff with our headstone. And so we'll sell headstones like all over.
Wow.
You know, we have these really cool, they're called our Temple series. And so for LDS people, we have ads in like LDS Living magazine and
Nice.
and a big presence of people search temple headstones, like we're the top of the top in Google. And so we'll sell them all over. And they're these really nice headstones that are like the temple is carved, not just like etched in, like, but it's almost like 3D.
Okay.
And they're really nice and they're really big. And we have a installer network that we can get them to people like all over. And so that's been really cool. And that's a big credit to my brother in knowing this isn't my thing, but he knows like all the keywords and getting us ranked on Google. And now all this, like one of our guys the other day was like, hey, I sold a Temple Series headstone in Ohio. It's like, awesome.
It's almost like a separate business. I mean,
Yeah.
like outside of the day-to-day operations of a mortuary, if you're selling headstones on e-commerce, like e-commerce type play, that's interesting.
Yeah. We still do like a personal touch, like obviously it's not face to face, but we're calling them because we want to make sure the design's right. So it's not just like that they click and order. Like there's a design process and things like that. And maybe we could do that, but for those, they're high ticket headstones.
Sure.
And then we also want to make sure that the cemetery that they want them to go to, that they're allowed, because there's restrictions on height and different things. And so, it's something where, we sell a lot of them in Cache Valley in Utah generally, but it's been fun to expand it.
Yeah. What is it like operating a mortuary? I mean, what are the margins like? How are you thinking about profitability?
Yeah.
Like, how does it all look?
Yeah. So, it's a business where, it's a service business. And so, we, and we have to kind of be ready at all times because we don't know when we're going to be busy. Right. And we don't know when people are going to pass away. And so we just kind of always have to be ready. I mean, there are good margins, but there's also, we own all our buildings and there's hearses and, so it's maybe not as asset heavy as maybe some, but it's, there's some capital investment that's definitely, gone into it. Our biggest asset is our team. We have really high standards for the funeral directors that we hire and staff because, when people need our services, like, it's crucial that we get it right. You can't go redo the funeral. Right. And so, and it's just a emotional and hard time. And we get asked, how do you do that? Isn't it just so hard? And it's like, yeah, there's definitely hard times. And even as a funeral director, you still sometimes just don't know what to say when someone loses a loved one. But there's also kind of a bright side to it too of, sometimes, hey, grandma was in her 90s and she was ready to go, and it brings the family together, the funeral, and it's happy times and memories, and there's still a loss and we still miss her, but it's this positive thing,
Right.
But yeah, the business side of it, I mean, we pay attention to it. The industry looks at, because the industry's kind of changing, as demographics change. There's things talk about, okay, maybe cremation becomes more popular, but then we've seen there's studies done in the younger generation that like ceremony and having a service is actually something that is almost like, there's almost a trend where it became less and now it's actually coming back. Like people want to remember, like younger people want to have this meaningful ceremony, not necessarily, it might be religious, it might not, but they want to have that, and so we're trying to be better at, paying attention to those trends. We've hired consultants that, I feel like that they can help bring you up to speed on those kinds of things better. We're becoming more involved in the Utah Funeral Directors Association, and also my brother and I in the National Funeral Directors Association. We went to the convention in New Orleans last year, and it was phenomenal just to see the death care industry, all the different vendors and things that are going on, and you get some fun ideas, and some are kind of crazy that you're going, I don't know about that. You get some pretty creative ideas, but it's a great business. It's a great family business. And I think that's what most funeral homes are, is they really are family businesses that are, generational. And that's what ours has been. And I mean, I hope it continues, I've got 5 kids, and my brother has 2 with 1 on the way. I mean, we hope that it continues on. Yeah.
Sure. And the services you provide, so it's a physical venue where people have a funeral. There people come and they can view the body. Yeah. Like a chapel type area. And then do you do like embalming? Do you do cremation? What's like the suite of? Yeah,
we do all of that. Okay. So really, when there's a loss in the family, mm-hmm. we are on standby 24/7. We'll answer the phone. We'll go bring their loved one into our care. Mm. And then shortly thereafter, maybe it's the same day, maybe it's the next day, the family will come in, and we have to help guide them on, hey, how do you want to remember your loved one? And yeah, we can do cremation, we can do embalming, we can do direct burial. And we have kind of the full, all of the options. We have our own crematory. Some people want to witness their loved one, having going into the crematory. Some people, want it really simple. A lot of people want to have some sort of celebration, and sometimes they don't know what that is. And so we've done, we've been doing it since 1938. And so, we hope that our experience can, that we can help guide them along what would be best for their family. But yeah, we have 6 locations. 5 of them have like chapels and viewing areas. One of them's just kind of like a viewing facility only. That's kind of just, as needed. But we've had traditional funerals. We've had non-traditional funerals. We can also go off site. I've had funerals in someone's airplane hangar before.
Nice.
Or wherever they really want to have it. A lot of times they're at their church. So sometimes we'll have a visitation at our mortuary the night before. And then the next day, we're going to a church and having the service, and then going to the cemetery. And, but yeah, it's interesting to see kind of, there's kind of a lot of cultural influence here with Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. A lot of those, are at the church, and then after they come back to the church for a dinner, and the Relief Society's helping and things like that. I think outside of Utah, there's, I know there's some new kind of like funeral home layouts that are kind of more flex space that, they can have like luncheons and different things there at the funeral home. And there's, I think, probably some of that here in Utah too. And we've done that at our facility when people have requested. We have a couple of them that can kind of do that, but some are being built, specifically for that kind of almost like reception more style than looking like a traditional funeral home. But
interesting. And what is it like if I have a family member pass, what does it typically cost to run the spectrum of those services for somebody with you guys?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say an average, funeral, because when we're talking headstone and stuff, can be $15,000. Yeah. They can be a lot higher. Mm-hmm. We do have some more economical options too.
Sure.
But I think that's kind of a good, ballpark. Yeah.
And when you're looking at acquiring, you mentioned some acquisitions, like how do you value mortuary? What's like a typical revenue? Is there like a multiple on EBITDA? Are you like, hey, what's a good price?
Yeah.
For this? Yeah.
So definitely EBITDA multiples are, I mean, if you were like, you can look up funeral homes for sale, right? There's like brokers, and, a lot of times there will be, if the real estate's involved, then can be more like, 7 times EBITDA or 8
Okay.
or whatever.
Yeah.
If the real estate's not involved, then, if it's small, it's going to be more like your mom and pop business that's, 3 or 4, kind of a basic mom and pop valuation, right? 3 to 4 times EBITDA. But obviously the larger the operation, then the better multiple you're going to get. And obviously, like anything, if the business is running well, if their accounting clean, if there's really no questions on, is this, can we trust these numbers?
Right.
Then then you can get, those type of higher, 7, 8, maybe 10. But I think, it all depends too on kind of the real estate situation too. Cause some funeral homes, their real estate might be worth more than the actual operation.
Yeah.
Like you think of a small funeral home that started in Los Angeles or, San Francisco or somewhere, Denver, maybe even now. I mean, those markets that have taken off.
Right.
I think that becomes a thought too, when you have, an individual who's looking at retiring and he's got this real estate because most funeral homes own the real estate. I mean, it's a special use property, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like you just go lease a building. There are funeral homes that, there's some funeral homes in warehouse space, that their model is more of like a discount, volume based.
Yeah.
We don't do that. I think it's definitely a model that some people are figuring out. I think, we're used to just spending more time and attention with the families and not, we don't see it a volume practice. We want to just make sure that family's taken care of and be able to spend the time with them.
Sure.
And so that's more of our model that it's just kind of always been. It's kind of like, well, what's the family asking and what do they need and how do we do it? How do we make that happen? Right. Mm-hmm. How do we make their request work? Right. We want to see, how we can make it. I think it's either today or tomorrow. We have a service where, they're having a graveside. They want 80 chairs up at the cemetery. That's like a chapel, but we have that. So we're taking them all up, that's quite a lot of chairs. Usually there's maybe 10, cause we're going there, they're dedicating it or whatever. Mm-hmm. But, we try and help them, cause they have an idea in their mind and we want to make it special for them. And we want to, serve them according to their needs.
Yeah. Makes sense. That's great. I want to talk a little bit at least about Jack's Tire and Oil, kind of the background there, because I know that was a big part, it was a big transaction recently, and I'd love to hear a little bit of the background and your role, and then the merger there.
Yeah. So I know it's random to work like 3 jobs at one time,
but got a lot going on.
But I think, having a good team allowed it to happen. But in 2014. I think it was 2014 or maybe 2015. My grandma, who was the owner of Jack's, well, my grandfather was, but at that time he had dementia. And so she was really, the one that was, kind of controlling that. And my great grandfather started Jack's Tire and Oil in 1947. With Jack Parsons. So if you've heard of like J. Parsons Concrete, Parsons. Yeah. So that he was business partners with my great grandfather to get that started. And then they continued on with their business and my grandfather continued on. And when they started, it was, they had like a truck that I think they'd take gas or oil to the farmers. And they also sold appliances and different things, and then ended up, my grandfather bought the business from my great grandfather, and he's really the one with the vision. And he focused it on mainly commercial, and he opened up retread plants. And so he,
that's where you're like retreading used tires.
Yeah. And commercial. Yeah. So they have, I think, passenger tire retreading, but I don't know anything about that. I think it's so we initially were a Bandag franchise, which is now part of Bridgestone.
Okay.
But at some point we switched to Michelin. And so we were a Michelin franchisee, and we would so our customers were, trucking fleets who would, buy new tires from us, and then they'd bring them in, we'd buff them down, put a new tread on it, and we had a plant to do all that. And that was really what we were. Jack's Tire and Oil was known as a retreader. Like we were doing, a lot of retreading, and that's kind of what we were known as. And it creates, it creates a sticky customer, because you can kind of see the life cycle of the tire. Like, we'll sell you a new tire and then we'll retread it several times, and you'll get a lot more, a lot more out of it. You'll stretch your dollar a lot farther. And so my grandfather, he kind of went all in on that. And he was one that really wanted to grow. He wanted to become the biggest, retreader in the West. And I think got pretty close. We ended up with 16 locations. And so in 2014, my grandma just asked me if I could be on the board as kind of, a grandchild. Just, I think she thought, well, he's a lawyer, so maybe he can help. He can help.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of on the board more as an observer. Like, we had really good board members that had either, it was kind of like my grandfather was good with, he was big on hiring the right person. And so he hired a president, a CEO. He hired them away from Michelin, to become the CEO, where, let them run the company, hired a good CFO. And so as those executives retired, he would have them stay on the board. And so there was kind of that historical knowledge and everything like that. So it's just kind of that. And then a couple family members too. And so I was lucky to be kind of on that and just kind of observing, listening, kind of looking at the financials and seeing kind of strategy and what we're doing. And we were able to, during that time, we made an acquisition and kind of doubled in size. We bought we merged with, one of the largest Michelin, franchisee retreaders, commercial dealer out of Colorado.
Okay.
And so we expanded we're in, brick and mortar in Arizona, Utah, Idaho, Colorado, and California. And then in 2020, the CFO retired and asked me if I would, they said, hey, would you have any interest in coming on? You've been on the board, but would you want to come and take the CFO position? And initially I said, probably not, because I'm in the mortuary and I have my law practice, and I just don't think so.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I would probably, have to kind of move away from those things. And they said, well, because it's all family business and stuff, we would be flexible in allowing you to, so I had to step back from the mortuary, more than I was doing to make it work. Yeah. But I'm glad that I had the opportunity. The mortuary is I love that business, but it's, the tire business was just it's still a small business, but with 360 employees and 16 locations, there was just a lot going on. Yeah. And so learned a lot. And right. So I really, and we just had that merger. So we got the merger done, and then I started as the CFO. And so when you merge with a company your same size, there's kind of like a lot of culture work that you need to do, because people are used to doing it a certain way. And we do our financials like this, and we do our sales like this, and this is how we run commissions. And this is, all of those types of things. And so it's just a good experience to just work through all of that. And it was good. We became definitely a stronger company. There's a lot of pressure and consolidation going on. Yeah. And so we did some consolidation, and it's continuing to happen, and it has, that essentially we were bought out 4 years later. And
Yeah.
again, just the market's consolidating, and so you just have to make that decision. But yeah, I love my time there. Great people. The tire industry folks are just really good, hardworking people, from the actual, the guys in the retread plant to the guys driving the service truck, in the middle of the night, fixing a tire on the side of the road, to the vendors, and just an awesome culture and experience.
Yeah, I bet. And when you guys ultimately sold, what was driving that? Was it just, that consolidation in the industry? Had a really great offer, or were you?
Yeah. I mean, we were in a good position. I mean, we owned, either us or the company we merged with, their owners, we owned mostly all of our real estate. Mm-hmm. There really wasn't any debt. But to really kind of take it to the next level, we would probably need to infuse some capital and make a go at it. And I think, we were approached at about the same time, and there was some interest in buying the business. And so I think my grandma was just like, well, she was 85 or so at the time, and thought, let's just at least hear it out.
Yeah.
And ultimately it was her decision, and she just felt like it was right. Yeah. The right time for, I think, for not just her, but also for the longevity of the company. I think she could see that the company that we sold to, are based out of Missouri, and they have just been making a lot of acquisitions and growing. And that's good when the company, you see this culture of growth. It's kind of her biggest concern was the team and the employees, right? Mm-hmm. They were kind of like, she's really like, my grandfather knew everything about the tires, and she was a people person, right? And so it was like, just like the mother hen of the company. And so that was what she cared about. And so ultimately, I think, she had to make a really hard decision. And I think it was, the company that we sold to, is very well known, phenomenal company. Their owners are, about my grandma's age, which is interesting. And they have a family board with, but they still are involved.
After it.
Yeah. They have a phenomenal, OTR retread plant. So like the big tires, on big,
like tractors,
equipment. Yeah. So they'll retread those. Mm-hmm. And that's really strategic and a big advantage, because then you can really service, expanded the offerings. So it was of Jags, having that. And we were really strong. They're very strong. I think they have locations from Kentucky to Alaska. Wow. But we were so strong in our market too. And we overlapped a little bit. And so they're a competitor, even though we're both Michelin franchisees. We're competitors, and but they would retread those big tires for us, for our customers. But I think it just made sense, and the time was just right. And when there's when your market is consolidating and there's pressures, and the margins are not huge, they're thin, like those synergies and that consolidation is a big deal.
Some scale. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So what's next for you? I know you're probably shifted back a little bit more focus on the mortuary.
Yes.
And then as we're sitting here, you came from interviewing some potential, folks to expand your law practice.
Yeah.
But what's your focus going forward? What are your goals?
So going forward, the mortuary is a family business that I'm an owner in, and so want to keep that going. I'm heavily involved in it. I was also just elected to the Utah Funeral Directors Association board, and so we'll be doing that. I'm so excited to serve there, and then making sure that the funeral home is continues to be successful, and that the families that we serve in Cache Valley are taken care of. I mean, that's really important. And then the law practice, like I'm excited to scale that. I interviewed several attorneys today down here. There's a lot of great attorneys in Salt Lake, looking to grow and hire. We've just been growing a lot as we've been putting more into scaling and marketing, and we're moving in. I close on a building. We just outgrown our current space. So it was right by the mortuary, but I bought a building that's right next to another mortuary that we have.
Okay.
And so it's excited to close at the end of the month on that, and excited because there's space for like multiple tenants. And so it can kind of end up with tenants that do, kind of synergistic, right?
Yeah.
Like get an accountant in there, get, another law firm in there that we can pass. So financial advisor, stuff like that. So yeah, really looking forward to growing the estate planning practice. Maybe even outside of Cache Valley too, I want to continue to earn the trust of Cache Valley and be, hey, this is the firm that you think of when you think of estate planning. Right. Like I think the estate planning industry hasn't, like, if you think of personal injury, like you can probably think of off the top of your head, several injury firms, right?
Billboards.
The billboards, like they're, I think, the best at marketing as far as attorneys go. Mm-hmm. And other industries just, haven't done that. And so I want to do maybe a little bit more, marketing to help, solidify that in Cache Valley, and then maybe beyond. We'll just see, but I'm excited to grow that. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess speaking of estate planning, what do you have, like 2 cents you could share in terms of why that matters for entrepreneurs?
Yes.
Yeah. I a lot of times I have the thought, because I haven't gotten my stuff
That's
together.
very common. Yeah.
But it's like, I don't have enough assets yet, or I'm like, I'm not ready, or I don't know, but yeah. Why does it matter? Why is it important to get that stuff all figured out?
I think at every, like, estate planning is something that changes as your situation changes, but like it or not, you have kind of an estate. Like if you passed away, there's the probate code that would say, here's what happens. Right. And if you want to be the one that is dictating that, like then an estate plan is what you need. Now, do you need a revocable trust, an irrevocable trust? Do you just need a will? All those types of things, as I look at, because I've kind of been looking into why do people put it off, right? Because it's such every time, very common, a client walks in and they say, we know we've needed to do this for a long time. And then when they're done, they say, we're so happy. It was easier than we thought it would be.
Right.
Right. And, I think if you have children, if you have a home, then definitely you want to start doing it, because you want to control, hey, if something happened, what about my children? Who's going to take care of them? And then who's going to take care of the assets? A home, we want to keep that out of probate. Business owners, in Utah, we have a really favorable asset protection statute. So we can do irrevocable asset protection trusts, but you can still be a beneficiary of the assets. Most of the time, to get asset protection, you can't really be a beneficiary, because the rule is whatever you have access to, so do your creditors. But we have a statute where you can be a beneficiary. We have to kind of jump through some hoops and make sure we do some things right. But I think, for people that have businesses, that have property, or that are professionals, it's definitely something to look at. And then there's also on high net worth estates, like there's estate tax considerations, and we have a current high estate tax exemption amount now, but it's a little bit uncertain what's going to happen at the end of the year, and is that going to continue? And so high net worth people need to be looking at estate tax planning too. And usually high net worth people are also worried about asset protection too, right? Because even if you're not in a litigious job like a surgeon, there's with malpractice, just the more assets you have, you just become kind of a bigger target, right? I mean, if you everyone's out there driving a vehicle, that's the most common way probably to get sued is a car accident, right?
Sure.
And if you have, if you have a lot of assets, then, plaintiffs are going to be more diligent in pursuing their claim. Mm-hmm. And so, I think though that when people are looking at estate planning, it's, if you have the right team helping you, it's getting that plan in place can be simpler than probably you think. And just taking action and doing it, knowing that most plans are revocable, that you can change over time. So it's like, just do it based on the best information we have today. And if we need to change it in a few years, then we can.
Yeah, very helpful. I mean, that's great. That's a great overview, because I do think a lot of people put it off or think, oh, I'm young, or I don't have many assets, or whatever the excuse is. But to your point, it's not as hard as people probably hype it up to be.
Yeah, sure. So. Yeah. And no one likes to think about what happens when I pass away either, right?
Right.
That's human nature.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, last couple questions. We'll wrap up, Jase. I guess if being in your spot, you've got your hands in the funeral industry, law, you've done the Jack's Tire, but if you had any advice for, I don't know, your younger self, or how the trajectory has played out, is there anything that you would give your 20-year-old self, like, hey, here's some advice now that you've been through what you've been through on the business side, or just life in general, I guess? Yeah.
Oh, geez. It's, that's an interesting question, because I don't think I would change anything. Yeah. I mean, the advice could always be, you should have bought Apple stock earlier.
That's right.
That's always an easy. But I think also just, maybe not, I think it's easy to make a decision and then second guess it and worry about it. And it's more just act, just do, and be a doer, and make commitments. Don't be afraid to commit, and just go. And if things don't work out exactly how you thought it was, that's okay, because I think there's so much energy that comes from just committing and doing something. And it might not work out exactly how you thought, but the lessons that you're going to learn from it are maybe just as valuable, so just don't be afraid to commit.
Yeah, that's great. Decisiveness, action. It's great. And then last question I ask most of my guests is when you think about success in your life, there's a lot of ways to define that, but how do you define success?
Yeah, I think I like to define it as kind of doing the most with what you have, because, success to me is a lot different than success to Bill Gates, right? And so using with the knowledge, the connections, the resources that I have right now, am I making the most of it? And if I am, then that's success. Or if I'm getting close to it. I mean, I don't think anyone is 100% maximizing their, what they have access to, but I think just trying to, with maximize everything that you have access to, and in relationships, as I think of my kids, hey, we have limited time, right? So what I have access to, I mean, my time is probably my most important thing, right? Am I maximizing that and with my kids and with my family and allocating appropriately with my business? And I think if I am using that, and then I think that's success.
Yeah, it's great advice. Trying to maximize our potential. Yeah. Love it. Well, thanks so much for being here, Jase.
Thanks
you for sharing your story and taking the time. It was great to hear a little bit more about your background and what you've done. So appreciate it a lot.
Appreciate it, Chase.
Thanks.